The wind hits you before you even open your eyes. It seeps through the animal hides piled on top of you. It finds the gaps in the rock shelter. It cuts straight through to your bones before the sun has even risen. And this is not a bad morning. This is just morning. For roughly 100,000 years, your ancestors woke up like this. Not occasionally. Not in a particularly brutal winter. Every single day, for generations stretching so far back that every human alive today carries the biological memory of it. The last great ice age, scientists call it the Last Glacial Maximum, reached its peak around 26,500 years ago. At that moment, nearly a third of the Earth's surface was buried under ice sheets more than a mile thick. Sea levels were 400 feet lower than they are now. Entire landscapes that exist today were simply gone, swallowed beneath glaciers the size of continents. And your ancestors were alive for all of it. Not just surviving, adapting, innovating, doing things that, when you actually look at the evidence, should not have been possible for a species with no agriculture, no metal tools, no written language, and no central heating. So how did they do it? The answer starts with something you would not expect: fat. Not just eating it, understanding it. Anthropologist and author of The Fate of Rome, Kyle Harper, has written extensively about how ancient populations adapted their entire resource strategies around the caloric density of animal fat. Your ancestors were not simply hunting for meat the way a modern person might picture it, sprinting after a deer with a spear. They were targeting specific animals at specific times of year, specifically because of how much fat those animals were carrying. A woolly mammoth in late autumn, fattened on summer grasses, was not just food. It was a portable energy reserve. The fat could be rendered, stored, and burned for warmth. The bones could be split for marrow. The hide could insulate a shelter. One mammoth, killed at the right moment, could sustain a small group for weeks. This was not luck. It was knowledge. Accumulated, tested, passed down. Archaeologist and researcher Olga Soffer spent decades studying Upper Paleolithic sites. That is, sites from the period roughly 50,000 to 10,000 years ago, when modern humans spread across Europe and Asia during peak glacial conditions. What she found at sites across Russia, Ukraine, and the Czech Republic changed how researchers thought about Ice Age survival. People were not huddled in caves eating scraps. They were building semi-permanent structures using mammoth bones as the frame. Enormous curved tusks arched overhead, skulls stacked as walls, everything lashed together and covered in hides. These were engineered shelters. Deliberate. Repeatedly constructed in the same locations across multiple generations. One site at Mezhirich in Ukraine contained the bones of at least 149 individual mammoths used in construction alone. That is not scavenging. That is organized multi-generational resource management. So let's reconstruct a day. You wake before dawn in a bone frame shelter near a river valley. Outside, the temperature is somewhere around -20 degrees Celsius. That is roughly -4 Fahrenheit. Inside, body heat and a small fire of bone fuel. Bone burns longer and hotter than wood, and wood is scarce on the tundra. Keeps the space livable. Around you are between 15 and 30 people. Not a random group. Your extended kin network. The people you hunt with, share food with, and depend on entirely. The first task is fire. Someone kept it alive through the night, rotating the watch. Fire is not just warmth. Fire is survival mathematics. Without it, you cannot render fat. You cannot dry meat for storage. You cannot harden the tips of your spears. Your group treats fire the way a modern household treats electricity. It is infrastructure. It does not go out. By mid-morning, the hunters are moving. Not randomly. They are following tracks they have read for years, understanding seasonal animal movement corridors the way a modern commuter understands traffic patterns. The primary targets in a severe glacial winter are reindeer and horse, fast to move, yes, but also highly predictable in their migration routes. Researcher Pat Shipman, in her work on the relationship between early humans and domesticated animals, noted that the timing, location, and method of Ice Age hunts show a level of planning that implies not just intelligence but institutionalized knowledge, information that had to have been taught, rehearsed, and refined over generations. The hunt itself uses terrain, a frozen river crossing, a narrow valley pass, a cliff edge. These are not ambushes of opportunity. They are engineered events, designed weeks in advance, requiring coordination across the whole group. Back at the shelter, others are working. Hides are being scraped and processed, a labor-intensive task that takes many hours per hide and requires precise knowledge of exactly how much fat and membrane to remove before the leather will remain flexible in the cold rather than freezing rigid. Cordage is being twisted from plant fiber and animal sinew. Needles made from bone, actual needles, with an eye, recovered from sites across Siberia dating to 50,000 years ago, are being used to sew fitted clothing. Not draped animal skins. Fitted, layered, tailored garments with stitched seams designed to trap body heat. This is the detail that stops most people. Researchers studying cold climate survival physiology have found that unprotected humans begin losing core body temperature at around 0 degrees Celsius. Without effective insulation, death from hypothermia can occur within hours. The people who survived the Ice Age were not biologically different from you. They did not have thicker skin or a higher cold tolerance built into their DNA. They survived because they made clothes that worked. And making clothes that worked, clothes that would function in -20 conditions across weeks of continuous outdoor exposure, required mastery of materials science that took generations to develop. Archaeologist Ian Gilligan, who has written extensively on the evolution of clothing, argues that tailored clothing was not a luxury innovation of the Ice Age. It was the critical prerequisite for human expansion into cold environments at all. Without it, your ancestors could not have spread into northern Europe and Siberia. Without it, the settlement of the Americas, which required crossing the Beringian land bridge, exposed by lowered sea levels, would have been physically impossible. Clothing was technology, and it may have been the most important technology your ancestors ever developed. But none of this worked without something that is harder to see in the archaeological record: social trust. Anthropologist Christopher Boehm, in his research on hierarchy and cooperation in hunter-gatherer societies, found that the social structures of Ice Age groups were not simply useful, they were survival critical. Sharing was not generosity in the modern sense of the word, a voluntary moral act. Sharing was obligation, enforced by social pressure so powerful that individuals who hoarded resources during scarcity were effectively expelled from the group. And expulsion from the group in an Ice Age winter was not punishment. It was a death sentence. The social contract of your ancestors was written in survival math. Polly Wiesner, an anthropologist at the University of Utah, studied Kung San hunter-gatherers in southern Africa and found a practice she called hexaro, a system of delayed reciprocal gift exchange between individuals across different groups, sometimes separated by hundreds of miles. This network was not symbolic, it was insurance. When your local region failed, when the herd moved, when the river froze, when the season turned bad, your hexaro partners in another group were obligated to take you in and share their resources. Ice Age humans almost certainly operated similar systems. The evidence is in the raw materials. Flint and shells recovered from Ice Age sites in Europe have been traced to source locations over 300 miles away. Objects moved that far did not move by accident. They moved through relationship networks. Through trust maintained across years and distances, your ancestors survived the Ice Age, not because any one of them was extraordinary. They survived because they built systems of knowledge, of clothing, of shelter engineering, of social obligation that were larger than any single person. The mammoth hunters of Mezhirich were not lone survivors. They were participants in an intergenerational project that stretched back thousands of years before them and would continue thousands of years after. Here is what that should make you feel. Every time modern psychology research measures human stress responses, one variable comes up again and again as the single greatest buffer against anxiety and physical illness: social connectedness. Not wealth, not health behaviors, not even exercise. The perception that you are embedded in a reliable network of people who will show up when things get bad. The researchers call it social support. Your ancestors called it the only reason any of them were still alive. You wake up this morning in a heated room. The temperature outside does not threaten your survival. You will almost certainly eat today without hunting, building, or processing a single animal hide. And yet the deepest, oldest part of your nervous system is still scanning the same question your ancestors scanned every morning in that bone frame shelter on the frozen tundra. Are the people around me going to show up? The Ice Age never really ended. It just moved inside.